Hello, I'm Adam Noyce of AN Productions, and welcome to the Godzilla Vlogs, where we talk about anything and everything Godzilla. So, Shin Godzilla was a beautifully made film. I don't care what people say. I know it's a very divisive Godzilla film, but you know me, I've always been a fan of controversy in general. I have praised it constantly for its cinematography and editing. Everything has a purpose in that film. However, the more I was looking at that, the more I realized it wasn't the best shot Godzilla movie. For example, I think there are too many wide-angle lenses in that film. I'm not a big fan of wide-angle lenses, but it works in a movie because there's a purpose behind it. From a cinematography standpoint, what is the best shot Godzilla movie? And the more I was thinking about it, the more I suddenly started thinking there are two that kept popping up in my mind over and over and over again. And so I came to this conclusion. The two best shot Godzilla films, in my opinion, are Destroy All Monsters from 1968 and Godzilla vs. Gigan. Teiichi Kankura was the director of photography on Destroy All Monsters. And for those of you who don't quite understand what a director of photography is, a director of photography is in charge of the shot itself of a given film. Well, the director is working with the actors and gives genuine, stuff for the director of photography to work off of. It is genuinely that man, the director of photography, who says, all right, we need a light here, we need a light here, okay, the camera needs to be at this angle, needs to push in at this time. Kankura also DP'd Latitude Zero and Space Amoeba, which were also his last three films, and they were all directed by Ishiro Honda. And Destroy All Monsters is unique because it's unlike any other Godzilla film shot. Not just that, but it's unlike anything else Ishiro Honda had made. There are a lot more of those zooms where the camera zooms in or zooms out on something than the standard push-ins and push-outs, push-in and pull-outs of other Honda films. In fact, that's a standard of who Ishiro Honda was. Ishiro Honda had a lot of, you either start off really close on something and then the camera pulls out to reveal the situation, or he'll slowly push in on something from a wider shot to reveal what we're supposed to be focusing on. It's a very simple style, but that was Ishiro Honda's look. And Kankura didn't do that. Kankura did a lot more zooming and creative camera moves than that. The shots are intense and extremely calculated. A lot more calculated than his other films. For example, Kyoko Manabe, there's this great shot, it's one of my favorite shots in Destroy All Monsters, where Kyoko Manabe steps in the foreground as people are evacuating in the background, and the camera racks to her quickly as we hear Rodan flying over Tokyo, and she gives this like really evil grin. And that is such an awesome shot. What he does is basically the camera knows what it is doing and little room for improvisation. The camera is very aware of itself and its surrounding. It's God, essentially. It knows exactly when something's going to happen and what's it going to do. There's no room for improvisation. And another thing that Kankura did was he shot everything at eye level. You know, he never had very many low angles looking up or high angles looking down, which brings you directly into the eyes of the characters. This is making up for a lot of these creatures in Destroy All Monsters, because there's just so many. It makes up for their lack of characterization or personality. It makes things more intense within the confines of the framing itself. The shootout on Monster Island, for example, if you look at it, it's not a very tense scene, but the way how it's shot makes it more intense, and also the music added to it, and the smoke and the sound effects and the editing itself also adds a lot of intenseness to it. But again, the problem with Destroy All Monsters is that there aren't any real depthy characters in the film, and in my opinion, this style of cinematography brings out character without there really being any. It's sort of artificial. And many criticized his cinematography, Kankura's cinematography, for making the monsters look smaller. Again, that goes into him shooting everything at eye level. And to me, it makes up for this with the depth of field. You want to shoot at a low angle to make your monsters look bigger. Kankura didn't do that. He shot everything at eye level. And so, for example, you have this great depth of field with what he does, though, unlike the other ones, which, of course, there are exceptions. But, I'm just sort of generalizing here. And a prime example of this is Manda wrapping around the bridge during the attack on Tokyo. And suddenly the camera then pans over to Godzilla blowing up a refinery in the background. It's one of the most iconic shots from any of the kaiju films ever. Not just the Godzilla film, but kaiju films ever. And that's Kankura. That was his doing. Him shooting everything at eye level allowed him to be able to do that and everything like that. And it really shows off. And that style also made the final battle with Ghidorah and everything really visceral, with a lot of close-ups and such. It's a lot quicker edited and everything like that, and which makes it a lot more energetic in many ways than other Godzilla battles. And there's this great crane shot also as Ghidorah lands, and admittedly that was shot by Sadamasa Arikawa, but Kankura was still the head DP of the film at that time. Sadamasa Arikawa was not only the director of the special effects for Destroy All Monster, but he was also a DP for the special effects. But Kankura was always there with him to basically keep everything similar, to keep everything on the same flow. Now, at the same time, we have Godzilla vs. Gigan in 1972, which had a significantly smaller budget, smaller crew, smaller time frame to make the film. And that was done by Kiyoshi Hasegawa, and he not only DP'd the actors, but he also DP'd all of the special effects shots in Godzilla vs. Gigan as well. That was actually very common for all of the 70s Godzilla films, where they had basically 1.5 crew. I mean, look at Godzilla vs. Hedorah. That movie only had 1 crew, so everyone was the same. Him being able to shoot both the special effects and the and the actual actors, the human actors stuff, was a way to save money in 70s Toho, and that's why they did that. And Godzilla vs. Gigan suffers from a lot of stock footage, and in my opinion, it is worse than Godzilla vs. Megalon. In Godzilla vs. Megalon, at least it's minor stuff like tanks firing and stuff like that. In Godzilla vs. Gigan, it's entire chunks of the battle that are just stock footage. What is not stock footage in Godzilla vs. Gigan, in my opinion, is single-handedly the most impressive and dynamic monster fight from a kaiju film. Not just Godzilla, but from a kaiju film ever. And it has a lot to do with that cinematography by Hasegawa. And I don't care for this movie as a whole. Godzilla vs. Gigan is not one of my favorite Godzilla films. In fact, I think it's a very lackluster Godzilla film. It has some really fun moments in it, but I don't think it's a very good movie. But it has grown on me mainly for its editing and cinematography, so basically its aesthetics as a whole. Also, admittedly, it does have some fun characters, which is typical of a Jun Fukuda film in general, not just his science fiction films, but that's typical of him in general. The refinery battle in particular just captivates me. It's the beginning of the battle between King Ghidorah, Gigan, and Godzilla and Anguirus. And Nakano pulls no stops here. Teruyushi Nakano was the special effects director on this film. And we have a lot of fire, we have explosions, low-key lighting, close-ups to save on set sizes, which makes things more intense and visceral. And the length of shots is new, too. This is, in my opinion, the definition of almost a perfect battle. I mean, the camera is just constantly moving, and there's just, if the camera's not moving, there's so much motion on the screen itself that your eye is just glued to it. There's just so many explosions going off literally right in the suit actors' faces. And of course, the editing works it too. It constantly intercutting between mediums to close-ups to add a lot more sort of not only depth to the shots, but also a lot more of an urgency, the intenseness of the battle, the urgency of what is happening on screen and unfolding in front of us is really, and I mean utterly impressive. And I can't really think of any other Godzilla movie that has done that more successfully than in Godzilla vs. Gigan. And it's beautiful because you see Godzilla and Anguirus literally being swallowed up in the explosions and fire. There's just so much of this on this tiny little set, and that's how it works, is in the widescreen anamorphic lens. It was able to get some of these absolutely captivating close-ups and medium shots. I think anamorphic lenses can be great for getting shots like this in Godzilla vs. Gigan, and it works great. And the sound effects of Godzilla and Anguirus roaring, being swallowed up by the explosions, and the bellowing of Ifukube's music just makes the film, or that particular fight scene, so dynamic and so much better than your stereotypical fight scene. And there's some of these great long shots that go from Godzilla getting blasted by the Godzilla Tower at Playmate Land all the way over to Anguirus fighting King Ghidorah. And it's like a long crane shot. I'm like, this is impressive. You'd never seen that before in any other Godzilla film, even Destroy All Monsters. Also, for example, there's a shot where King Ghidorah looks over and blasts Anguirus off in the distance, and the explosion, and it sends Anguirus flying backwards. It's such a great shot because of the depth of field there. A lot of that goes into the monster fight itself, because in my honest opinion, there are a little too many close-ups of the human characters, and that's because they literally had like no sets to work with at all in the film, and so they compromised by pushing everything in a little more. There's not that much of scale when it comes to the human stuff. Basically, what I realized was that there is a correlation between Destroy All Monsters and Godzilla vs. Gigan in terms of their cinematography. And that's because I love these two kind of styles. Destroy All Monsters has great static shots. Like, really, it's really great at staging within a frame itself. There's not much for camera movements other than zoom-ins and zoom-outs. And there are camera movement, don't get me wrong, but he was very good at being able to stage things within the confines of one frame. Well, in Godzilla vs. Gigan, he had a lot more camera movement, dynamic camera movement, but you had both. It's done mainly for the lack of budget to hide how small these sets really were. One of the greatest shots in Godzilla vs. Gigan is the shot where Gigan is profile, and he's roaring, and you see the flaming city as he turns and walks away, and the camera just slightly pans over, and you just see the flames, and Gigan's kind of in silhouette, he's lit beautifully, and everything like that. The use of slow motion is also amazing. You know, shooting everything in a higher frame rate just really pulls out the performances, really pulls out the fight sequence in Godzilla vs. Gigan. Well, if you look at Destroy All Monsters, everything was a little more visceral. There was certainly high frame rate, but if you look at the final battle in Destroy All Monsters, the frame rate was not shot very high at all. I mean, it is shot at a higher frame rate because everything's moving just a little slower, but nothing like in Godzilla vs. Gigan. But it works in Destroy All Monsters because there's just so much going on. Godzilla vs. Gigan's a lot more personal than Destroy All Monsters as a whole. So they're two distinctively different types of cinematography that I really like and adore. Both of them managed to present the idea of what I love in cinematography, and that is the camera is a character. It reveals exactly what it knows, and that's it. Only what it wants you to know. And that's where a lot of the creativity comes out, and I always loved that idea. Both of them were very much like the camera was a god. It knew exactly when to rack, it knew exactly when to pan, it knew exactly when to move from point A to point B when something would happen. Well, a lot of films have sort of this slight delayed kind of action style to it. And while today you don't have that old style cinematography at all. It's all shaky cam, and I can't stand it. But the use of slow motion is really amazing in both. So those are my two favorite Godzilla films in terms of cinematography. I'm a man who's always thought cinematography is a very important part of film. Though I'm not a cinematographer at all, I do admit that it is a very important part of your movie. And these are my two favorite shots of the Godzilla franchise. And I hope that what I kind of wanted to do with this video is at least show you that there's more to just characters in a film. There's more than just, dialogue and everything like that. The next time you watch specifically these two movies, I would really like it if you really paid attention to the camera work, and you'll see why I like it so much. You'll understand, even if you don't like it, I think you'll understand why I do, and I think you'll admire it a little more. If you really just pay attention to the cinematography the next time you view either one of these films, Destroy All Monsters or Godzilla vs. Gigan. So, go on Facebook, like AM Productions for all up-to-date information of what we're doing there. Hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment telling me your favorite shot, your favorite Godzilla films in terms of cinematography. What was your favorite shot Godzilla film? Even what are some of your favorite shots from a Godzilla film, and so on and so forth. Like the Godzilla Saga for all up-to-date information on how those novels are going. Follow me on Twitter at AdamNProductions at twitter.com, and follow all my escapades on Twitter. It's really stupid. And in the end, this is Adam Noyes of AN Productions saying, sayonara.